you, most of you, to see you again, since I recognize almost everybody in the room. So I'm Jonathan Haupt. Thank you, Robin, for that very beautiful introduction for all things DAYLO. I appreciate that. Aww, it's nice to have fans. I'm a big fan too. But because DAYLO is student-led, the students are actually presenting tonight, not me. So I'm going to introduce our trio of presenters, and you all can come up together, or you can see, and they're going to take over. Do we have volume on the TV tonight? Anybody know?
Should be, yeah.
Yeah. Which one looks like volume? It could be any of them. Yes, good Lord, how many remotes do you need for this thing?
I got a bunch in my pocket too, John.
Yeah, all right, we're gonna trust it, because there is a short little video that hopefully will play in here. But presenting tonight on behalf of Team DAYLO, he is Patrick Good, who's president of DAYLO at Beaufort Academy. Patrick's a junior, and he's been a part of DAYLO through multiple generations of leadership. You can applaud for Patrick. You like to get him to do that.
Jonathan usually just speaks longer than that.
I know. So I was not giving the applause signal. That's on me. That's totally on me. Mickey Thompson is with us. Mickey is a graduate of Beaufort High School, where she won the Ann Head Literary Prize for short story. And now she is a freshman at USC Beaufort, where she is leading our first ever college level DAYLO chapter. I didn't have to prompt him the second time.
Yeah, we're quick learners.
Yes. Yes, And this is Lane Barber, who is president of DAYLO at Battery Creek High School, where she is a senior, soon to graduate, minutes away from graduation. All right, so I don't know who's going first, but somebody's driving. Okay, go for it. Good luck.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Islands Writers Network. 97 books were challenged by 2 complainants, only 2, in Beaufort County School District schools, and pulled from shelves on October 2022, without a review process. After more than a year of review committee meetings and appeals, 5 of those books have been banned, 91 have been returned to student access, and 1 was never in Beaufort County School District libraries to begin with. Through our response to the bans, DAYLO has become a nationally recognized model for successful student-led responses to book bans and censorship. DAYLO is kind of famous. DAYLO's recognition has been in both regional and national media. Last year, student leaders were featured in a front page news story in both the Charleston Post and Courier and the Island News. The recent 60 Minutes story, which is not up there. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. Story on book bans in Beaufort featured several of our friends from the school district, including Colonel Geyer, and almost featured a trio of DAYLO leaders who were interviewed for an on-air segment, which served as a research for the broadcast episode, and is on the 60 Minutes page. Is it not? Wasn't it on the other thing? Oh.
It's unaired. No, we've never seen it.
Oh, okay. I
We'd
thought
like to.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
would.
Okay. That's my mistake.
By the way, I watched that segment. It was excellent.
It was very good.
It made you proud to be a citizen.
Do you know the date of that segment when it aired?
March 3rd,
March
I think.
3rd. Yes, that sounds
So,
right.
yeah, so it's still on the website.
So DAYLO has already been profiled nationally 4 times in Education Week, Book Riot, Publishers Weekly, and School Library Journal. DAYLO is also being featured in an in-progress documentary film, and we were the subject of a Nickelodeon news segment that aired nationally last month. That segment featured myself, Patrick, Mary Ruff from Beaufort High, and Kate Silvatelli and Dylan Ryan from Charleston's Academic Magnet School. So if this works, we should play the video for you.
Push it one more time.
No sound.
There is sound, but it needs to be loud.
It's just on the mic, if you turn up the volume on the laptop, we'll hear it from the laptop only.
Oh, is it just coming on a laptop?
I think so.
then we may not be able to hear it. It's not gonna get any louder.
Yeah,
than
probably
that.
not.
It's all the way on the laptop.
Should we play it or just move on?
Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay.
In March, DAYLO also received a national commendation from the American Association of School Libraries at the recommendation from the South Carolina Association of School Libraries. An article about that appears in the March 13th issue of the Island News and in the current issue of Low Country Weekly. So what exactly is the big idea about DAYLO, and why do we keep making news? With our time this morning, we're going to tell you, or this afternoon, we're going to tell you what DAYLO is and why it matters so much to so many.
DAYLO's origin story. In 2019, 3 years before book bans came to Beaufort, Beaufort High welcomed YA novelist Nick Stone, author of the social justice themed debut novel Dear Martin, for a school-wide big read and assembly. All 1,300 students of Beaufort High had the opportunity to read and discuss the novel and to meet the author.
Patrick, can you back up one slide?
Oh,
There you go.
oh, there we go.
Yep.
Okay. But 25 students were also selected to have lunch with her. One of those freshman class president, Holland Perryman, inspired by the positive impact of Miss Stone's visit had on Beaufort High, Holland approached the Pat Conroy Literary Center and Mr. Haupt about creating a student internship so she could learn more about literature. As a Conroy Center intern, Holland was particularly drawn to participate in social justice themed programs. Because of Holland's public role at the Pat Conroy Literary Center, her internship became an inspiring good news story for the community. Holland and Mr. Hopp's mentoring relationship was the subject of a newspaper story and a cover story in the Beaufort Lifestyle magazine.
During the pandemic, the Conroy Center pivoted into virtual programming, which gave the center and Holland opportunities to connect with authors they never would have met in person. And those connections would ultimately inspire the creation of DAYLO. During the Conroy Center's 2021 March 4th celebration, several Beaufort High students, led by Holland, had the opportunity to interview YA author Kaylin Barron about her debut novel Cinderella is Dead. That student-led book discussion has since become a model for DAYLO. And Ms. Barron has returned virtually 2 more times to discuss her later novels with DAYLO in live-stream public conversations. At that same 2021 virtual March 4th, Holland got to introduce, how do you pronounce that one again? Anika. I didn't want to say it wrong. Holland got to introduce Anika Nani Rose, the first African-American Disney princess, who was also a contributing writer to an essay collection called Meeting at the Table. Speaking about allyship, Ms. Rose also told the audience that they needed to do the work for themselves, to find their own meaningful roles in social justice advocacy. Although Holland and her family had participated in Black Lives Matter marches following the killing of George Floyd, in that moment she questioned whether she was doing enough of the work. So she decided to do more. A lot more. Between March and April 2021, Holland created DAYLO, a student-chartered book club at Beaufort High, through which students could read diverse books as a means of having difficult but essential conversations and fostering empathy and understanding. From the beginning, DAYLO embraced the idea of reading as a form of advocacy for marginalized voices. Beaufort High English Chair Wendy Lacombe served as DAYLO's on-campus faculty advisor, and Mr. Haupt served, as he still does, as an off-campus advisor and mentor.
DAYLO is first and foremost a student-led, diversity-themed book club. Chapters now exist on 8 school campuses: Beaufort High School, Beaufort Academy, Battery Creek High School, The Complete Student, USC Beaufort, Charleston's Academic Magnet High School, the Charleston County School of the Arts, and Columbia's Spring Valley High School, with more chapters now forming. Students read and discuss books with diverse viewpoints and challenging themes, sometimes getting to meet the authors in person or remotely, like Ryan Sala, author of The Honeys, Dr. Homera Kaderi, author of Dancing in the Moss, Layla Sabrine, author of You Truly Assumed, and Deshaun Charles Winslow, author of In West Mills and Decent People.
DAYLO has also made connections with authors who have supported our anti-censorship advocacy. We'd like to share 3 examples in the fall of 2021. Millie Bennett joined Holland and Alicia Aurora as an intern at the Conroy Center. Her first day on the job, she was asked to introduce author Jason Mott at a reading at Nevermore Books. Mr. Mott is the author of several books, one of which, being Hell of a Book, won the National Award in 2021. He was impressed with Millie, and through Mr. Haupt, he kept up with her internship adventures. In March of 2023, when Mr. Haupt asked for this help, Mr. Mott made an 8-hour round trip to Beaufort to speak for 3 minutes at a Beaufort County School Board meeting in support of Millie and her fellow DAYLO students.
As part of their work with the documentary film, 3 of DAYLO's student leaders, Millie, Izzy Troy Browserben, and Elizabeth Foster, had the opportunity to meet author Jodi Picoult, whose novel 19 Minutes was banned in Beaufort County School District. Ms. Picoult graciously signed copies of her book with the inscription, "DAYLO makes good trouble." These books were then given to school board members by DAYLO during a school board meeting in May of 2023. DAYLO also recently hosted an evening read-aloud, musical performance, and discussion with #1 New York Times bestselling children's author Raj Haldar, author of This Book is Banned, who DAYLO students first met at the American Library Association's National Convention. In collaboration with the Storybook Shop, Mr. Haldar also visited 2 local elementary schools and gave an author keynote to educators at the Palmetto State Literacy Association annual conference while visiting Beaufort. Even though Raj got to speak to hundreds of students and educators on his Low Country visit, he says the highlight of his trip was his dinner with DAYLO.
One of the books on the list of 97 was Damsel by Elena K. Arnold. Beaufort High DAYLO Vice President Mary Ruff delivered public comments in support of this powerful feminist dystopian novel. Those comments caught the attention of Ms. Arnold, who had since been in touch with DAYLO about our anti-censorship advocacy. 3 of our local DAYLO chapters, Beaufort Academy, Beaufort High School, and Battery Creek High School, have all recently read her award-winning young adult historical fiction novel, The Blood Years. Later this week, all 3 chapters will have the opportunity to meet with Ms. Arnold through Zoom to discuss this novel, her writing process, and her own anti-censorship work.
On campus, DAYLO is a book club. Off campus, DAYLO is a pro-literary service organization, hosting and participating in service projects. These projects benefit our community's literacy engagement, teach our students models of servant leadership, and add credibility and visibility to DAYLO's anti-censorship advocacy. We'd like to share some examples with you, and this is my favorite, which is DAYLO's monthly teddy bear picnic, read aloud partnership with the Port Royals Farmers Market, which grew from an annual event to a monthly and sometimes bi-monthly program with DAYLO volunteers from all of the Beaufort-based chapters reading empowering, diverse picture books to young readers and their families. Our next teddy bear picnic will be held this Saturday, April 6th. The Teddy Bear Picnic also includes a new partner, the U.S. government. In collaboration with the National Park Service, DAYLO hosts a quarterly Read with a Ranger program featuring Ranger Catherine Freeman, reading books thematically connected to both DAYLO and the Park Service, and also offering a related art project.
Students from DAYLO and Battery Creek's chapter of Coalition Z also served as community literacy volunteers for a Beaufort County Democratic Party laundry and literacy pop-up event in Beaufort, which included a voter registration drive and community issues interest survey. That collaboration also led us to create and donate a Little Free Library book box to the Family Laundry Center on Boundary Street, where it's been very popular. One of our Creek DAYLO members, Zoe Way, also registered to vote that day. On the success of that project, DAYLO recently donated a second Little Free Library book box painted by Becca Bennett to the new Royal Wash Laundromat in Port Royal, and we've had to refill it weekly ever since. During Banned Book Week in October, DAYLO students collaborated to fill a dozen Little Free Libraries across Beaufort and Port Royal with pro-library, pro-literacy books, making them freely available to our community. That was such a fun and impactful experience, we've decided to continue it, using some of the books donated to us through book drives. We've also expanded to restock 18 Little Free Libraries, including 2 donated by the Pat Conroy Center and 2 created by DAYLO.
DAYLO also collaborates with the Conroy Center, TCL, and other community partners on the Beaufort Human Library Project, which fosters empathy and understanding through conversations with volunteer human books. DAYLO students serve as a bookmark to coordinate the event. A public edition of the Human Library has been held 3 times now. Inspired by our Human Library experiences as a bookmark, Zoe also replicated the program 3 times at Battery Creek, where more than 400 students have participated.
This year's Beaufort Human Library will be held this coming Sunday, April 7th from 12:30 to 4 at TCL in Beaufort. We will feature 17 volunteer human books, 2 of whom appeared in the 60-minute story about book bans in Beaufort, Bluffton High School librarian Karen Garris and School Board Vice Chair Colonel Richard Geyer. You might also recognize another one of our featured human books, poet Elizabeth Robin.
DAYLO students also volunteer our time with other local organizations and events that share DAYLO's mission of inclusivity and empathy. For example, DAYLO hosted a free and very well attended Read with Pride photo booth at the annual Low Country Pride Festival in Port Royal this past fall, at which I was the photographer and the backdrop artist and set designer.
DAYLO believes in pro-literacy advocacy. In response to book challenges filed by 2 community members against 97 books in Beaufort County Public School libraries, 6 DAYLO students began speaking publicly in support of intellectual freedom and the right to read at school board meetings. Millie Bennett and Madeline Confair from Beaufort High, Elizabeth Foster, Pete Cooper, and me from Beaufort Academy, and Isabel Troy Brazabon from Battery Creek High School. For 9 months, we spoke consistently at school board meetings, often with adult community advocates speaking against book bans, as well as DAYLO founder Holly Perryman also returned to speak out at one meeting here on Hilton Head. Both publicly and privately, several of our school board members specifically credited the DAYLO students as inspiring their votes to return books to curriculum during this year-long review and appeal process. On May 16th of 2023, I delivered public comments to Beaufort County School Board here on Hilton Head in defense of Toni Morrison's novel, The Bluest Eye. It says to read the full comment. Okay, I gotta go get that. Throughout my whole time at DAYLO, my grandmother has read every book with me and adored every one. We have had 2-hour-long conversation about these books, and it has brought us together. That was until we read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, one of the 97 books that have been challenged. My grandmother said that it was awful. She told me that she kept waiting for something good to happen, but it never did, and that the book was too dark and unrealistic. Very shortly after this conversation, a student told my mom that she was being physically and sexually abused by several members of her family. My grandmother's opinion of The Bluest Eye did a 180. Instead of seeing an unrealistic dark book, she saw a girl whose street she passes twice a week. A girl she's seen and talked to while helping my mom decorate a classroom. She realized the book wasn't too dark, she just never held a candle and looked at that dark. The Bluest Eye has expanded the Beaufort community. It's the reason my grandparents and their friends have given hundreds of dollars in clothes, school supplies, activities, books, and so much more to the students who need it. If you think a book is too dark or unrealistic or a bad representation of our world and country, open your eyes to the community we live in. It is far from perfect. I wanted to thank you for returning the Beaufort Eye to the shelves for high schoolers, but instead I want to leave you with a question. Why can someone walk home after school, go into her house, walk in the door, and see and feel what she cannot read? Throughout our advocacy work, DAYLO was introduced to Sarah Barbara, the Executive Director of the South Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. Ms. Barber collaborated with me and Mary Ruff on an op-ed for the Charleston Post and Courier, which connected book bans to the censorship of essential information for students about sexual violence, trauma, and healing. The op-ed promptly became instructional material in the USC class on ethics and advocacy. This is particularly a good example of writing as an act of advocacy and of the importance and impact of student advocates collaborating with more experienced adult advocates.
On the basis of their inspiring advocacy at the local level, several of last year's DAYLO students had opportunities for pro-literacy advocacy on the state and national levels, including testifying before the South Carolina Senate Subcommittee on Education, traveling to Washington, D.C. to meet with lawmakers and fellow advocates, and speaking at the American Library Association Conference in Chicago. Book bans and education censorship efforts have now escalated to the South Carolina Department of Education. So a group of 20 DAYLO members from Beaufort and Charleston traveled to Columbia in opposition to Policy 43170. 5 DAYLO student leaders, myself, Patrick, Mary Ruff, and Kate Selvitelli and Dylan Ryan from Academic Magnet High School, addressed the State Board of Education. Our group of students was also introduced and recognized in the Senate chamber by Senator Mike Fanning, and we had the opportunity to meet other pro-education lawmakers at the ACLU office. A film crew from Nickelodeon News also filmed their segment on DAYLO that day.
Because DAYLO has been so active and visible during Banned Book Week in October, current and former DAYLO leaders, including me, were invited to speak in 2 national live stream events, both centering on the importance of youth advocacy. One was hosted by the American Library Association, the other by Children's Book Council. More recently, a group of current DAYLO leaders, also including me, participated in a statewide live stream for the South Carolina Education Association, which quickly became their most viewed video out of the last year.
Earlier this month, DAYLO presented a 2-hour workshop on student-led pro-literacy advocacy at the annual conference of the South Carolina School Library Association, where we were also recognized with our national commendation from the American Association of School Librarians.
As our largest project so far, 14 DAYLO student leaders, including the 3 of us and our 2 mentors, have collectively created an online youth advocacy toolkit to help other students and educators learn and adapt DAYLO's student-led pro-literacy model. That toolkit will be a part of the Get Ready, Stay Ready National Anti-Censorship Resource website and a related national project for librarians and educators called ReadCon. This toolkit will be available publicly this spring.
As an example of what's in DAYLO's toolkit, we'd like to share with you a story about how all of these pieces can fit together in an impactful and sometimes unexpected ways, and why how our focus on pro-literacy community building works so well. At that May 2023 school board meeting on Hilton Head, we've mentioned several times tonight, a total of 7 DAYLO students spoke in support of intellectual freedom. A few members of the Sun City Democrats were also present that night, just beginning to discuss how their group might engage with book bans. They were very impressed with DAYLO. And so, members of the Sun City Dems also attended a presentation similar to this one, hosted by Indivisible Beaufort. Impressed even more, the Sun City Dems made plans to host DAYLO for a presentation in their community that fall. We also gained a new DAYLO chapter advisor thanks to that Indivisible presentation, Patrick Martin of the Charleston School for the Arts. The DAYLO presentation to the Sun City Dems also was a book drive in partnership with Bluffton's independent children's bookstore, the Story Bookshop. This book drive resulted in the donation of over 150 pro-library, pro-literacy books from a wish list we created and have since expanded.
Additionally, the Sun City Democrats donated a Story Bookshop gift certificate, which was used to purchase copies of DAYLO's current read, The Blood Years, which in turn is making possible our Zoom conversation with author Elena K. Arnold later this week. As a result of these generous donations, DAYLO was also able to donate bundles of pro-literacy and pro-library books to every single public school library in Beaufort County, all 34 of them. I was able to deliver a couple of these bundles.
Several members of the Liberal Ladies of the Low Country were in attendance at the Sun City presentation. They subsequently hosted DAYLO for a presentation and another book drive, again in partnership with the Story Bookshop. Their generosity resulted in the donation of books that DAYLO has used to stock over 20 free libraries across the community. In a direct response to the success of the Sun City Democrats and the Liberal Ladies of the Low Country, presentations and book drives, DAYLO was invited to speak to the Hilton Head and Bluffton chapters of the League of Women Voters. The League also graciously hosted a civics and voting themed book drive for DAYLO.
This whole sequence of events begins with DAYLO students speaking out against censorship, but it resonated in ways that also positively impacted our book clubs and our community service outreach. There are several important takeaways to be learned from this case study and success. A pro-literacy approach to advocacy is also inherently pro-community. Being active in a positive way in your community leads to new relationships. Those relationships will often lead to additional collaborations that not only fuel the mission and activities of your organization, but can also result in inspiring new pro-literacy advocates in your community. Collaboration is paramount in advocacy work, but it is particularly helpful to student advocacy groups to partner with more established adult organizations who likely have resources and wisdom to share. You can't always know in advance just how much of an impact you're going to have in advocacy work, but you can trust that whatever impact you have will be meaningful to more than just yourself.
In presentations like tonight, DAYLO students have been invited to share stories of our advocacy work with numerous other organizations, including Low Country Pride, Indivisible Beaufort, the Fripp Island Democrats, the Sun City Democrats, the South of the Broad Democrats, 2 Unitarian Universalist churches, the Congregation of Temple Beth Israel, and the League of Women Voters, the Liberal Ladies of the Low Country and Statewide Freedom to Read Coalition, and the National Coalition Against Censorship's Kids' Right to Read Network. That's a bit of a mouthful. Along the way, we've also met and inspired other students and educators, including several who have since formed their own DAYLO chapters.
DAYLO is a little goofy. Being an advocate for something you're passionate about is hard work. And a big part of what keeps DAYLO going through this hard work is that DAYLO is genuinely fun and a little bit goofy. Our mentors and advisors always make sure that we're given the freedom to still be teenagers throughout this experience. Positivity has always been essential to DAYLO's mission, so there's a lot of silliness and ice cream and cookies involved.
We invite you to learn more about what we do by following along with our adventures in advocacy through our Facebook and Instagram accounts. They're also linked through the QR code on our bookmarks, which we have available for you today. We're grateful to you all for inviting us to speak at tonight's meeting, and with the help of Mrs. Bennett and Mr. Haupt, we would be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you all so much.
I don't have a question. I just want to say kudos, thumbs up, congratulations, and you are an inspiration. Truly.
Thank you.
So my question is, how does the advocacy and community work you're doing impact your academic studies at school? How do you knit those together? How do they influence one another? Think about, so when you take a history class,
Yes.
do you have a new perspective because of the work you're doing in engagement, or how are you impacted?
I think through my work with DAYLO, it's prompted a lot of empathy building, but a lot of also newfound knowledge and interest, just because when you get a part of the community, you're introduced to it a lot more, you talk about it a lot more, you learn a lot more, and then you get a lot more interest in it. Next year, they're offering AP African American Studies, which I'm trying to have my school let me take, because it's the first year they're offering it, and if I never joined DAYLO, I can guarantee you I would never be working with my advisors to let me take this class.
Thank you.
If I can just quickly add to that, the students who are attracted to leadership positions in DAYLO, the students for 3 years now who have stepped into those roles, are the absolute busiest high school students you've ever met in your life. They're engaged in so many different things already that the pieces kind of fit together in ways they don't always realize when it happens. But as they progress into college, as Mickey is now, as Millie and Izzy and Lizzie and Holland and so many others, yes, have been, I hear from them about how much this means to them and how far ahead they are of their peers in college because of the experiences they've had through programs like this.
Great, thank you.
Yes, over here.
So Genesis, just to clarify, is just a book band is how it all began, or was it DAYLO's been around for a while?
Book club started as a book club, and before book bands were even a thing in our county. So we
And when was that?
2021, so spring of 2021, and then the book band started fall of 2022. So the first chapter was established at Beaufort High in the spring of 2021, and then the spring of 2022, the second chapter at BA, and then that fall is when the book challenge was started.
So DAYLO was established in the community for 1.5 years before the students spoke at a school board meeting. And because of that, several school board members, our superintendent, and a lot of the other administrators from the school district already knew who DAYLO was and appreciated what DAYLO was doing. The original student leaders from DAYLO, or the original Conroy Center interns who were student leaders in DAYLO, spoke at both of our statewide English teacher conferences before there were book bans. DAYLO was already a good news story out of Beaufort County. So when other groups around the state, and sometimes even outside of the state, contact us about what can we do to get students to speak at school board meetings, we have to sort of back up and say, that's not really the starting point for DAYLO, and if you start there, you're probably not going to be that successful. When the students at Academic Magnet High School in Charleston started speaking at school board meetings in Charleston, they did that almost immediately without really taking the time to establish DAYLO in the community or even in their school. So nobody knew who DAYLO was. They were impressed that these really smart kids were coming and speaking, but when they were saying they represent DAYLO, that didn't mean anything. So the context was missing, and they had to sort of back up and create that context, which they're doing now.
So is it fair to say that you guys was at Conroy Center supporting them? Is that how they got to be where they are today, or is it just?
DAYLO was created by a student intern at the Conroy Center, and then there were 2 other student interns at the Conroy Center who were also part of DAYLO. So it's certainly helpful to DAYLO that Conroy Center exists, but DAYLO is its own thing. It exists in its own universe, which I'm happy to support.
I would also say that the book club aspect, the reading these kind of challenging top titles and discussing them, that creates this bond between the students that makes this sort of work easier, right? They know each other on a level that you wouldn't if you weren't having this experience of reading these
I
books
mean,
and
too,
discussing
that's
them.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's key.
Yes.
It's absolutely key.
I just want to add to what Eddie said, applaud you all, because you know, you stood up for something you believed in. And, you know, you didn't talk about what we, you know, I know I heard at one of the board meetings, some of the abuse that you took on social media because of your stand. So I admire you for your guts and what you did. The second thing I want to say is, as a retired journalist, I was very disappointed in 60 Minutes that they did not include you, because in many ways you all were the story. And the work you did to push for change deserved to be on the national broadcast as part of that story.
Thank you. Watch the documentary when it comes out. 90 minutes instead of 8, so I think that'll be good. Yeah. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the free little book, things are you know, get empty, very filled, and you have to fill them up. Who fills those up, and where do the books come from?
So the students fill them up. Mr. Haupt and I fill them up when we need to. It just really depends. And then the books are a combination of books that we've received from book drives and donations, and then I work in a library, so I receive a lot of books that I cannot take in my library, just space-wise. So a lot of those go.
So there's I think it's the Rotary has a program I think it's nationwide with Little Free Books. Is there any way to conjunctively work together with that?
Possibly. I wasn't aware of that. We do restock one of the Rotary Club in Beaufort has a Little Free Library at Washington Street Park, and that's one that's on BA's route, actually. So we do restock that one regularly.
There's a Little Free Book in Old Town Bluffton and all that. And I just I don't know where they're, but there's tons of them. If maybe that could help to, you know, I don't know, I'm not a Rotarian, I don't know if there's any way to, you know, work with them and.
It's a great idea.
Publicize.
We're all about collaboration. We're happy to check it out. Thanks for that tip.
I'm just curious, are there any chapters south of the Broad?
There are not, but Bluffton High School has the Bluffton Bobcat Readers. That's Karen Garris, who was featured on 60 Minutes and will be our featured book at the Human Library. That club is very similar. We find that most of our clubs, there's a big overlap between DAYLO members and National Honor Society members and Interact members, and it's very similar at Bluffton High School as well. Other questions for students, possibly? Yeah.
Two questions, 2 points. One, we're a writers group, and we're very keenly aware that if we didn't have the First Amendment, the freedom to write and express ourselves, we wouldn't be able to meet nor write, right? Do you feel there's any reason whatsoever for censorship?
No.
I think there's benefits from reading every book. Like, one of my friends who isn't even like particularly involved in DAYLO that much, but just like, he said he's read the Communist Manifesto. He doesn't believe it. Some of it he doesn't enjoy or like, but he can learn from it. It can be used in history. And I think like, even if you particularly disagree with some of these books, because they are, freedom of speech is opinionated, just because you disagree with it, that doesn't, you can learn from it.
Correct.
You can apply it to other things, and also it's someone's opinion. I mean, we have the freedom of speech just because it's like, we need to respect that. I think, Ms. Bennett, you know more, you spoke to a professor at where, on one of the field trips, Howard.
The girls spoke, I did not speak
Yes.
to him, but yes, during our first trip to DC with the film, we were able to meet with Professor Justin Hansford, who's a constitutional law expert at Howard, and he spoke specifically about not only the right to speak freely, but to also receive information freely, and that those are both two sides of the First Amendment, that banning books takes away that right to receive information. So I think that's an important point to make as well. And not every book is for everybody, but that doesn't mean that we take away access.
Who carries your torch after you graduate?
Other fellow students.
Yeah.
I mean, in Beaufort Academy's first 3 years, we had 3 different presidents. It just keeps going down the line, kind of president, then like maybe you get a VP that becomes president the next year, which is kind of, with me, and that happened to, or Lizzie was co, but it's just, you join DAYLO, and then you learn your first couple of years, and eventually, depending on how much work and stuff you put into it, you can become one of the leadership positions.
This kid came and asked me about 3 or 4 times if he could be vice president his sophomore year. It has worked out very well.
From what I've observed with the bringing in more people to DAYLO, it's the younger students are inspired by the older students, and they're able to see the kind of impact that these older DAYLO members are able to have, and the places that we're able to go, and the people we're able to reach. And that inspires younger students to follow in our footsteps. Like my little sister, just this year, she joined DAYLO because I talked too much about it, and she just, wanted to see what the big fuss was, and she's loving it. So it's stuff like that.
It continues to grow in ways that I think we just never really imagined how big it would get. And last year we took 4 students to the State House, and that seemed like a big deal. And this year, before we knew it, we had to rent a 15-passenger van to get to Columbia for one 8-hour day.
So it's a club, and that's how many people there are? 15?
No, that was 15 from 3 different chapters, plus we had 4 more from Charleston join us. So I would say our numbers in Beaufort are probably 60 between
About
3 chapters.
60,
Yeah.
So closing in on 100 students across South Carolina who are DAYLO members right now, including a lot of super quirky freshmen who are eyeing leadership roles. One of them already in a leadership role, already creating a DAYLO. So there is a lineage that continues, thankfully.
Well, speaking as a former high school English teacher, kudos for getting people excited to read. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's just something enticing about forbidden fruit,
Yeah. We do have a lot of fun, yes, indeed.
And it sounds like from what I saw that was presented at a school board meeting, there are some writers in the group too.
Yes.
Which makes us happy as well.
It was amazing to watch the first, before we had the 6 students speak at the first school board meeting, we had a planning meeting just because we didn't know what this was going to look like and how we were going to do this, and we kind of wanted to read their statements and kind of get a feel for where we are. We read them, we were like, oh, they don't need us. They are totally fine, and it's a testament to their teachers. They have all had amazing AP Lit, Lang, research and seminar teachers, and a lot of great advisors for mock trial and speech and debate. And so they have just been all of this has nothing to do with Jonathan.
And all of that was very good on college application.
Yes. Yeah.
What was most impressive to me, as I showed up, I was with my granddaughter in New Jersey. I showed up in January, and the way that the students that would present all covered different aspects of the topic, so there was no repetition, except for the theme of put the books back. But they were accessing the argument from so many different angles, and in a way that was so powerful and articulate.
That was really, they came up with that. I mean, they decided that they wanted to.
Very smart tactic.
And then they also knew
their
exactly
instincts
which order they wanted to go in when they got up to speak, and so they would submit their, like things to be a public commenter and the order that they wanted to go in. So it was fascinating to watch.
Yes. And the school board members who have spoken to us about the impact that DAYLO has had, and certainly those of you who've been to a school board meeting and seen the juxtaposition of how thoughtful and organized and prepared and right the students are when they speak versus those who are trying to ban books, who are pro-censorship, who can't really form a sentence or an idea and present it in a conveying way, and just sort of yell a lot. It gets very loud, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't say anything. There's no substance to it. And that's because, I mean, as Mr. Conroy said, writing is the highest form of thinking. If you can actually turn your thoughts into an act of communication, you're so much further ahead than somebody who can't do that. And these kids have been astounding at doing that.
Might be because they read.
Might be.
There's a lot of research to support that.
Yeah.
Well, just one other thought. I spent 12 years on a public school board, and my very favorite board meetings were those where students presented. That instead of just talking about buses and budgets and book banning or whatever it was, we got to touch what we were all working so hard to do and see that, and it was so powerful. And so when students are talking about something they really care about, it's not like the school board needs to be your adversary. Sometimes they're just waiting to see the results of all the work that's going on in that district, and they're grateful. And I'm sure that a number of the school board members are really grateful for that.
About 8 of them.
3, not so much.
8 of them were very grateful, yes.
No, we can keep working.
Yeah.
At the vote, just so you, to clarify for those of you who don't know, the vote was consistently 8 for, 3 against.
Yeah.
No explanation on
Yes,
why.
yes.
I thought that's what was kind of
Yeah.
that comment.
Yes.
Just wanted to clarify.
8 of them were very supportive, yes.
Well, you may get questions on the slide once we break up, but thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. So the bookmarks they're going to hand out have a QR code that will take you to a lot of our content, and also the bookshop that we have through the Storybook Shop, where you can buy books to donate for our little free libraries as well.
And if you want to see that Nick News piece, it's only about 90 seconds, but it's linked on here as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Oh, excellent question. Sumi personally. So Jonathan Howell, Jane McKenzie.
Okay.
Thank y'all so much for having me.